Welcome to the Platinum Freight Podcast with Peter McRae, a podcast for business owners sharing the latest news and tips about customs clearance and freight forwarding. Welcome to episode 14 of the Platinum Freight Podcast with Peter McRae, Customs Broker. And today we're focusing on the topic of importing to New Zealand via express carriers. So, Peter, let's start with an overview. What are express carriers and how do companies like DHL and FedEx facilitate the importation of small parcels to New Zealand?
The express carriers that bring these smaller shipments to New Zealand, generally they are DHL or FedEx. I would say that they're the two largest players that will bring packages to New Zealand in the express courier context. So the whole purpose of an express courier company is to move a package from point A through to point B and do everything in between those 2 points for one price, and to contact the importer the day before delivery to let them know how much tax needs to be paid so that the package can be released and then delivered by one of those two express courier companies, DHL or FedEx.
And what are the benefits of this end-to-end service for importers?
Express carriers, they have their networks, they have their own track and trace systems. They are able to do everything from the beginning and to the end. So when we break that down, the importer will receive a quote to ship their goods by DHL or FedEx, and that quote will include things like provide the packaging that is needed to package the goods from overseas, collect the goods from the overseas supplier's address, do the overseas customs clearance, pay any terminal fees at the overseas airport, bring the goods to New Zealand by air, pay any New Zealand terminal charges at the airport, do the New Zealand customs clearance, and then deliver the goods to the importer at their address in New Zealand. So the initial quote, the initial price may seem expensive, but when you look at how much is covered from point A to point B, I believe that there's a benefit for importers who may have shipments that are smaller. And when I say smaller, I usually would think under 100 kilograms or possibly a bit more, maybe under 200 kilograms, because the importing business or the importer in New Zealand needs these goods quickly. Maybe they're time sensitive, maybe they're urgent. So there is a benefit to allow an express carrier to move the goods to New Zealand. Even though I say that the express carriers generally deal with smaller packages, it's not uncommon for large companies to move cargo with DHL or FedEx because of security or because of the value or because of the time sensitivity. So they do move large shipments. DHL was involved with moving the vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously they were chosen to move cargo that was needing to be temperature controlled, plus it was urgent. So there are benefits of having express courier companies move shipments from point A to point B.
And what is the significance of the 1,000 New Zealand dollars or NZD threshold for parcels? And what happens if the value of the goods is below this amount?
So if a importer or importing business in New Zealand purchases goods from overseas and if the goods are under 1,000 New Zealand dollars, then DHL will be able to customs clear the package easier because there is no import duty, there is no import GST to pay. There is a import processing charge of $81.25 plus GST, which is charged by the New Zealand Customs Service. If the goods, however, are over 1,000 New Zealand dollars, then DHL would have to assess the goods on behalf of the New Zealand Customs Service to work out what import duty, how much import GST needs to be paid on the goods, and a $81.25 import processing charge would also need to be paid. And DHL or FedEx don't charge to do a customs clearance. So there's no professional fee, there's no customs clearance fee, because that customs clearance fee has already been built into the shipping cost. So the importer or the importing business would only need to pay DHL or FedEx the tax aspect that needs to be paid to the New Zealand Customs Service. And once the importer or the importing business has paid the express carrier that amount of tax, then the express carrier can then deliver the package or packages to the importer or importing business's address.
Can you explain the New Zealand Customs Service or NZCS importing processing charge and why this is applied to parcels requiring customs clearance?
So the New Zealand Customs Service charges an import processing charge for all shipments that arrive into the country. So whether the package arrives by the postal system, by an express carrier, by air cargo, or by sea cargo, if the goods are over 1,000 New Zealand dollars, then there'll be an import processing charge. And that fee is a fee that the NZCS charges for the work that they need to do to assess risk, to monitor, to examine shipments that arrive into New Zealand. This import processing charge has just recently been increased, so the new fee as at August 2024 is $81.25 plus GST.
Now, what are the advantages of using express carriers for importing goods to New Zealand, especially in terms of speed, convenience, and cost effectiveness?
So express carriers are convenient and they provide a service to New Zealand importers which allows smaller shipments to move quite quickly from point A to point B. So one step behind express carriers would be if you have a small shipment and it's coming from overseas, you may ask your overseas supplier to send it by the postal network. And the postal network would mean that the package is lodged or submitted at the overseas post office and then travels by air to New Zealand. And then it then goes to the International Mail Centre in Auckland. Then you then need to have the goods customs cleared. The goods have to be tax assessed, and then you'll get the package. So the packages that are traveled by the postal network obviously are going to take longer for you to receive the goods, whereas the goods that come by the express courier network, there's no reason why you shouldn't have the goods in, let's say, 3 to 5 days, because one company has been managing your package from the very beginning through to the very end and is doing everything in between so that the wheels keep on turning to allow this package to be delivered to you quickly.
Now, can you share a case study or example of a smooth import process using an express carrier, highlighting the key steps and benefits experienced by the importer?
So more than likely, importers will rely on these express courier companies because they need the parts for their machinery or they need the items to be resold quickly. So some importers will contact us and ask us to quote them to do the customs clearance on a shipment that is arriving with, say, DHL or FedEx. And once we advise them that the customs clearance has already been prepaid and that there's no need to pay another customs broker a fee to clear the goods, then the importer is aware that they can just rely on the express courier companies to clear their package. So there are occasions where importers still want us to clear their goods because they deal with one person who knows their goods and they have that one contact. But we also say to them, we're happy for the express courier companies to do the customs clearance. And if things do go a bit pear-shaped, then just reach out to us and we'll, get the wheels turning again to have that shipment processed through the system.
And finally, can you share some tips or best practices for importers to ensure a smooth process when importing goods to New Zealand via express carriers and how to avoid some of those common pitfalls?
Probably the most important thing that a importer or importing business should be aware of or should do is if they think or if they know that there's a package coming to them, if they've purchased something online and they've never imported before, then they need to be aware that every individual and every business needs their own dedicated New Zealand customs importer code. And once you have that importer code, it will be valid for that person or that importing business through their lifetime, through the business's lifetime. So we always recommend that the importer or the importing business downloads the New Zealand Customs Importer Code application, and it can be found by Googling NZCS224, and then they submit that form to the New Zealand Customs Service with some photo identification, and then that application could take as little as 30 minutes, or the application could take 3 days. So the sooner that the NZCS 224 is submitted, the better it is for the importer or the importing business, because if you have a package that is arriving with DHL or FedEx, that will be the first thing that they will be asking. They'll be asking, have you ever imported to New Zealand before? If so, could you please provide your New Zealand Customs importer code? And if you don't have that code, so they're going to provide you with the form. You'll need to complete it, submit it, go into a queue, wait for your code to be issued, and then you'll then provide the express courier company with that code, and then the process can then restart. So if we're looking at making things smooth and streamlined, then having that NZCS 224 completed and the code issued will allow your packages with the express courier companies to be processed quicker.
Thanks for sharing your insights and tips, Peter. Now, to learn more about customs clearance and freight management services, visit platinumfreight.co.nz.